keep up with everybody.
There you
I
go.
bet you can.
Dick.
It's a,
Dick's face.
Hello?
You should, Dave, you should have had a dual control board so Jill could be running board too.
The one good thing is that there's a limit of 25 video streams
Okay.
with our account. So there's a
Right.
limit on how much I can handle.
Hmm.
We're just talking over how people's summers were, and Dave has let people know now that I had a little bit of a camping accident myself. Had a 100-foot section of a tree fall on my tent while I happened to be in it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Wow.
it's awful.
Yeah, but I survived.
that's what you want to happen to you.
The tree and the tent look a lot worse than me, I tell you.
The tree was broken in pieces by the time Dave was done with it.
Well, we had to break it in pieces to get it off of him.
Yeah, I bet.
Wow.
So we've got pictures of that, but you know.
I hope you kept a piece of the tree.
No, no, we never did.
He doesn't have a fond connection to that tree. I think he wanted to leave it behind.
So does 7777 have a name?
Jack.
What's the name?
Jack.
Jack. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Luke. I don't know how to change that, so. That.
That's okay.
It's like agents 7777.
The rest of us got these other names, you know? I mean, anybody know what they did to have their name on theirs?
On the Zoom?
Yeah.
It might, I
I
think
signed
mine's
in.
on there because I established one of the free Zoom accounts.
Hmm.
But for anybody joining for the first time, I don't know where it's grabbing the name from.
This is my first time and it asked me my name when I signed in.
Yeah, same here. Well, when I opened a Zoom account,
Okay.
I had to enter my name.
Okay.
And you know, you can participate without a Zoom account. So maybe
Correct.
when you open a Zoom account that you get your
Oh, I
name
see.
associated with it.
Hey, Mary,
Yeah.
you look
I
like you had a long day.
It was a good day.
Okay.
Good. Who's working these days?
I am.
Laura, you are, and
Yep.
Ruth is, and Mary Ruth is.
Yeah.
Hi, nerd.
I'm a
Hello,
nurse.
everybody. Hi.
I read her.
So anybody been out there adventuring lately?
Yeah, I went to Wright Peak in July.
Oh, good.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was there as a summit steward for a couple of days.
Good for you.
Really? A volunteer summit steward?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. In July. Awesome.
Excellent.
How'd that go?
Oh, it went well. It was good weather that weekend,
Uh-huh.
and had quite a few people I
I
talked to.
bet you did.
I was gonna say, you bet you're busy, very busy.
I
Well,
just
that's
read an
cool.
article that they had 3 rescues on Marcy on Saturday between I think it was 4 or 5 p.m. to midnight. 3 rescues.
Wow.
All
Really?
the same party, or was it 3 different
3 different
parties?
parties. 3 different parties. There was a woman who had a medical issue and when you see the article about how many people were up there, it was an incredible number of people who responded. And it turns out they found 2 other different people who were having some type of injury or medical issue. You know, the numbers are just so high up there, it's almost not surprising.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Marcy was my first mountain to climb. That was this past July as well. I'm a newbie here.
Okay.
I climbed that in a pair of Army surplus boots, blue jeans, and a pea coat.
Okay. So Bill, you were trying to mimic that Genesean article that we just read, right?
Obviously, I had no idea what I was doing.
Climbed Marcy and went to visit our daughter who was summit stewarding up there that day. She was up there with the head of the summit steward, and a little farther behind us came her fiance in a full suit, and he proposed to her on
Hey.
Mount Marcy that day.
Yep.
That was good too. That
Hey, Denny, if you've got like music or TV on the background, can you go on mute?
we'd love to see anybody who, if you want to show your picture, we'd honestly love to see you.
Yeah. I just didn't want to listen to the 7 o'clock news during the call. I know some people just don't like to show their video.
Oh, okay. Our daughter-in-law is a junior high Spanish teacher, and those Spanish kids don't want to face the teacher. So they
No.
leave all their screens black, and it's kind of hard to teach to a black screen.
Yeah, sure it is.
But she's working on that, you know?
Okay.
In some cases, our host is holding off the video feed so that more people can get on, though, not intentionally blocking it.
Oh, okay.
So who took adventures in the Adirondacks this summer?
I did.
Okay, Bill, let's name some of them. Bill, where did you go?
You know, Shay and I are old enough that we're starting to give up on this whole notion of 46 peaks.
You've been on 39 for how long?
I'm a proud 39er, and I'm going to die a 39er but we did go up one of the fire tower peaks, Loon Lake Mountain.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, the last 3/4 of a mile is just like going up a 46er, okay? Absolutely miserable, rocky, muddy, eroded trail. And I can tell you one thing I learned from
social hours.
Mountain is we're never going up it again.
Chapter reading.
Well, Bill, don't give up on 39 because I'm still working on getting you a Sherpa because that's what you said you wanted. All right.
The other thing is there is no shame in climbing the other mountains, the other waterfalls, the other hikes in the Adirondacks, because
They're
there's
fabulous.
a lot of beauty there to be had and plenty of pleasure. So Dave and I have been working on the Fire Tower Challenge.
Yeah, I'm going with a friend of mine on a backpacking trip to do the Cranberry 50 in early October.
Our daughter is doing the
like
same.
I said, Peter's backpacking trip was wonderful.
Tell us about one of your adventures, Luke.
Well, that one was we backpack in to Wolfjaw Lean-To, and we all pitched tents, or a couple of ladies stayed in a lean-to, and then we did Upper Wolfjaw, Armstrong, Gothics, and then I went over and did Pyramid and met back up with them. I mean, I had done them all before, but it was nice. It was just me, Peter, and all the girls. And we helped a lot of them get, a lot of the mountains that they need towards their 46. So that was satisfying. And it turned out really, and we hiked out Sunday morning, and on the way down, we ran into Michael Barrett. So that was fun.
All right, cool.
And I'm going up next weekend too for 4 days.
To what area?
We ran a house with a bunch of guys. We've been hiking together for 20 years. Some of the guys who haven't completed 46 still need Seymour, so I'll do that again. And we're going to do DeBar Mountain the following day. And the day before Seymour, I'm going to go hike up to from the top of Upper Works Road going on Indian Pass. I'm going to go take a look at Wallface. There's a viewpoint on Indian Pass right in front of Wallface, so I'm going to go do that the day before Seymour.
I've seen that viewpoint. It's great.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Indian Pass is a great path. I love that path.
Yeah.
That in when we did McNaughton.
Okay.
We did a through hike. So we had someone meet us from the other side.
Oh, good for you.
At the lean-to.
Yeah.
So we went past Wallface, and it was really cool.
Excellent. Yeah, that point on Indian Pass that has a tremendous view has a name. I just can't remember the name.
What does that say? Start video.
What other Adirondack adventures happened this summer?
Reinhardt, did you get up there at all?
No, we've been pretty busy with family with the coronavirus here at our house on the lake. It's been popular for people to get an escape. So I do plan on heading out in another couple of weeks, though, God willing, for the Northville Placid Trail.
Excellent. That's still on schedule.
It's
Good.
Still on the schedule, hopefully. Yeah.
Okay.
And
But
how
I haven't
long
been.
do you think you'll be hiking that?
Yes, it's the plan.
How long would that take?
The trail is like 138 miles. I plan on hiking it from Northville to Placid.
For Reinhardt, that's like 2 days.
Yeah, I wish. Those days are over with, Luke.
Are you going to take a week, maybe?
Come on, I read your book. I know what you're capable of, Reinhardt.
It's probably, I'm planning on 10 days.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes. There's a couple of side trips I'd like to make. There's a fire tower along the way. And if I get real ambitious, maybe try a bushwhack heading over to Street and Nye. They're pretty close. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
Bill Schweinfurth is possibly going to join me for part of the hike. He's still debating.
Okay.
You can come back at 7:30.
Excellent.
Barrett isn't even here yet, the executive.
So Dave Harrison, any trips on your future?
Well, I took an exciting trip to Mendon Ponds a couple of days ago.
All right.
Yeah.
No, I've been doing some kayaking on mostly on Hemlock and Canadice, Black Creek, Braddock's Bay, and some some hiking local parks.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of nursing a bad back, so I'm not doing any backpacking these days.
Okay.
But I am getting out on the trail.
Good. Let me suggest canoe camping is the way to go, man.
Yeah.
You're not schlepping all this stuff on your back, and you can
Schlepping. You are schlepping.
and you can travel in style. Okay. Shay brings along one of these boxed wines, throws the box away, just brings along the bladder. Okay, with that, we have camp chairs. We actually have fresh foods and the like. I highly recommend it.
That explains, Shay, why you're so jovial on the trail, huh? You've got that wine bladder in your pack.
Well, we really have not done the canoe camping in a couple of years. Bill is actually looking for people who will do it. Everybody that we used to do that with have all gone to little campers or big RVs. So they don't do that anymore.
Well, that was our summer adventure this summer. We had to give up going to Banff. And so our alternative was to go to Forked Lake, not Fourth Lake, but Forked. And we canoe camped, and it was wonderful. It was an escape from all the news and all the drama that comes with that. And there was a wonderful loon family that lived there, fabulous stars, great canoeing. I mean, it was everything we needed for a few days. And I'd like to get more of that in.
Jill Nichols.
So, Jerry, how about you? Did you go anywhere and take wonderful pictures this summer?
I was at Fork Lake for twice.
Fourth Lake?
Fork.
Okay.
Where you were? I was up there last week and taking photos of that loon family.
Yes.
A month ago when they were baby chicks.
Uh-huh.
And last week when they were almost adult size.
That's awesome. What we saw by being there on the lake with those two chicks, we could see the parents at opposite ends. And then when anything dramatic would happen, an airplane fly over or a motorboat go by, you got those loon calls and the little chicks came paddling over there. It was really great to watch the whole thing play out.
Well, right now the chicks are about the same size as the adults.
Mm-hmm.
And they learned to dive last week.
Okay.
So now they're diving and they're learning to catch fish.
Are they starting to change color?
The brown is almost all gone.
Okay.
They look like a non-mating loon right now.
Okay.
And in another few weeks, they'll be flying out to the coast. flying out to the Atlantic for
Yeah,
the winter.
okay.
Do any of you follow the Loon Center's story they've been posting on the a couple of chicks and a loon predators and loons on Loon Pond up north in the Adirondacks?
No.
If not, you should go to the Adirondack Loon Center for Loon Conservation's website. They've been posting it on their Instagram page, but it's been a not quite daily, but every few day installment and telling some of the same. They've got pictures of the progression of the loons, and you can start to see the most recent one of a few days ago shows the adult starting to molt and getting ready in his coastal uniform, getting rid of his black and white.
Okay.
Interesting pictures. It's fun to follow some as closely as you have.
That sounds great. We had that speaker from there come and talk last year.
Yep.
So I would love to look that up and follow that. How about you, Denny? Any adventures?
Hi,
Hi,
yeah.
Hi.
No, hi, I'm just still, hang on. I don't know how to do Zoom. So,
That's okay. We're glad you're here.
okay, no, I'm sticking, I have a frozen shoulder, so I'm sticking close to home.
I saw Denny on Sunday.
That's right. I went to Conklin's Gully and we did a fossil walk with Victor Hiking Club. That was fun, wasn't it?
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
And then we continued on to walk up some of the waterfalls. We used rope and everything. It was excellent.
Nice.
I didn't do that part.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been good for your shoulder.
No.
But it was fun.
A friend and I took a nice hike a couple of weeks ago to Wesley Hill Nature Preserve.
Oh, I love that place.
Just beautiful. We didn't go down into the gorge.
Okay.
But it's just beautiful hiking, and the trails, it's managed by the Finger Lakes Land Trust.
Yeah.
And they did a nice job in remarking the trails. It's a classic Finger Lakes walk.
Yeah.
The gorge is very tricky though. Not so much getting into it as climbing out of it, because
yes, it is.
It's
especially in the
steep.
winter. I've done it in the winter, Dave. It's even harder.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that Briggs Gully, that if you follow the gorge down to Honeoye Lake, you get to a place called Briggs Gully, which is one of the most beautiful waterfalls, but you can't access it anymore because it's the only way in is from the direction of the lake, and that's posted. So
yeah, and even when you go down towards the gorge, there's a lot of area that's private land that they really don't want people on. But I agree with you. I love hiking there.
Wow. So Wesley Hill Nature Center is near?
Wesley Hill Nature Preserve.
So Gulick Road.
Yep.
You know where the Nature Center is?
Oh, yes.
That's on
Right up the
Gulick
road
Road.
from that.
Before you get to the Cumming Nature Center, you'll get to, well, first you'll get to Wesley Road. You don't want to take that though. Just continue down Gulick Road till you'll get to the parking area for Wesley Hill Nature Preserve.
Okay. Okay.
And there are various loop trails, and there's an old cabin on the property too, which I would love to own.
Yeah.
Perhaps in another life.
Yep. Is there a Kathy on the call?
Don't see a Kathy, although there is an iPhone.
Luke, I answered her question and she dropped off after that.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
I think she was somehow got into the wrong meeting or something.
I was wondering because I wanted her to ask because I had no idea what she was talking about. So thank you because I gave her a long answer, but now it's not needed anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rich, how about you? Have you been out hiking or paddling? Getting out there at all, Rich? Maybe he stepped away. How about you, Annie? Maybe Rich is talking to Annie.
Yeah, that could be. Peter, what about you?
He's on mute, but maybe he can unmute.
Oh, we just got back from a week based in Lake Placid. So doing low peaks, we're trying not to do high peaks and add to the traffic of everyone else there. So,
Mhm.
What did you do?
oh, well, had to do Mount Joe, of course.
Yes.
Yes.
And then Baxter, Hurricane, we did
Okay.
some canoeing. We did an interesting little trail at the Whiteface ski area. Hidden in the middle of all of the ski slopes is this little green area that has not been bulldozed like everything else there, with a little stream and a whole series of waterfalls.
Wow.
It's called, let's see, Stag Brook Falls Trail. It's kind of nice. I mean, it's short. It's not, it takes you a half hour or something, but it's kind of fun.
Excellent. Hi, Jackson.
Yeah, hi, Jackson.
Hi,
You
everybody. Pardon me, Jill?
just was going to ask if you've had any summer adventures.
Just a lot of walking daily in the neighborhood. Usually a weekly hike somewhere in the general vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing outstanding. We're leaving for the high peaks next Tuesday. We're climbing our last fire tower in the Adirondacks, leaving us with just 3 in the Catskills, and we're done with that challenge.
Oh, good.
Okay. What's the last fire tower for you in the high peak in the ADK?
Well, we have a choice of 7, and we're going to do Mount Adams at Tahawas, across from the Santanonis.
No, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it also gets less traffic than some of the other ones.
Yeah, it sure does. Plus, you get to walk across the Hudson River.
Yeah.
Carol and I just got our patches in the mail this week, our fire tower patches. We finished it years ago, but just hadn't got around to sending it in.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Peter.
Sure.
Luke, have you climbed Mount Adams?
No.
Okay. Peter, have you?
Several times.
Okay.
It's a nice.
Mount Adams has some really great views from Mount Adams.
Yes.
You can see some of the other high peak areas. It's really great views. They had a
Yeah.
feature on it once in Adirondack too. They had some really great pictures from there. It's a great tower. You'll like it.
Mary, when did you climb it?
Oh, I probably climbed it back in 2015 when I was doing the 46. I did Allen one day and then did Mount Adams the next day.
Okay.
Hi, Bill Schweinfurth. Welcome.
Bill, we saw you were just on the move there for a minute. We weren't sure where you were going. You're on mute, Bill.
Bill, do you want to unmute yourself and tell us what you've been up to?
He's just trying to figure out how to do it.
Okay.
Lower left corner.
Yeah, run your mouse over the lower left corner.
Of the black part of the screen.
Okay.
Well, hi,
All right.
Jack. Welcome to the social. And Gary, who are you? Gary, who?
Hi, Joe. I'm Gary Diana. I've been emailing you lately.
Hi. Okay, I've been talking to you. Welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi.
Gary's going to come back and speak to us in November. So if things go well tonight and we continue this, which we hope to do.
Yeah. The quality of the audio and everything seems good.
Uh-huh.
So I'll just share a couple things I did this summer. So back in July, I helped a friend, a group of us went and finished his 46er on Gothics, which was fun.
Yeah.
We got to the garden parking lot, I think at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was full.
Yeah.
People had moved cones to park extra cars, but we had some friends that dropped us off.
Wow.
And so we went up the cable side of Gothics, which was kind of wet. It was a sunny day, but it was kind of wet and slippery. A lot of that red slime like you see on Allen.
Yeah.
And because we had people picking us up, we did a traverse over to the American Mountain Reserve, or Adirondack Mountain Reserve, the AMR Road. We kind of went over Gothics because we didn't want to come down that steep area with all the slickness. And
So did you go to Pyramid then?
no, he just needed Gothic. So we went up, did that, and just came down the other side to the road. In August, my wife and I were in like eastern central Vermont. And my wife is not into 8 to 10 hour strenuous 46ers or 4,000 foot peaks. I've done them all, and she's gone on some of them with me. But so we just did a couple of fire towers in Vermont, and then I climbed Mount Washington. But the day I did it, it was in the clouds. So we caught a good day. We drove over there, and we were on sections of that harrowing road up to the top of Mount Washington in my full-size Chevy truck.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot to stop you in certain sections of that road if you veer off a little bit. So, but we got a great view that day. That was kind of
I just hiked that 2 weekends ago, and we planned it out. We had a 3-day window to pick the best weather day, so we were lucky we got views. And on the drive to the hike at 5:30 in the morning, we had a moose run across the road in front of us. Fortunately, we weren't driving too fast.
Wow.
Yeah, I've yet to see a moose in Vermont or New Hampshire yet, but I'll, see the signs. But and then I was hoping that Winter Mountaineering School would be open this winter, and they just announced just today or yesterday that they're going to do virtual stuff and online stuff. So canceled until 2022.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know who she's doing it for, but Barb Brenner will be doing a leadership training, a trip leader training on a web page. I don't think she's doing it for ADK. It's web-based. That might be something we can take advantage of.
Yeah.
Hey folks, we've just reached our limit on video feeds. There may be other people coming in, but what you'll find is that people get pushed in and out of their video display because of the limit of 25 video feeds for our meeting. So if you see somebody's face move around, pop off, don't worry too much. They're probably still on, but they're just only voice at that during that period.
Now, so more people can participate with their voice, right? But their picture won't be up there.
Yeah, so please make use. You'll still have, those of you who are on video, you'll still have access to the group chat. If you go down to the black bar at the bottom and click on the chat bar, it'll send a message to everyone, or you can actually chat individually, but and we'll try to moderate that so that we can, if you're interested in talking, we can pick that up also if we can't get you other ways.
Would it help if some of us closed out of our video to let others in?
You could, but I'm not going to tell somebody to bump off when when someone comes in. I'm going to let the system handle it, and people can choose the route they want to go. We have about 5 more minutes of social time, and then the heavy hand of time will come down, and we'll move on to the next part of the program.
Does everyone see how to use the chat queue that's at the bottom of the page? If you click on the chat and you want to ask a question later, you can, say you've got a question, and then you'll be put in the line to be asking that out loud. So
It's not showing on mine, Jill. My Zoom is behaving differently than it usually does. There's something called more. Maybe it's under that.
well, if you click on the bottom thing, if you click on the chat, it usually brings up a sidebar for the chat.
David, I think what you're saying is you're not even seeing chat.
That's correct.
Okay.
So Dave, if you just take your mouse without clicking on it, but just roll it towards the bottom of the screen, you don't see like a menu bar pop up?
I don't have a mouse. I'm on an iPad.
Aha. That could be a different experience.
Yeah. Hi, Jim, and
Hello.
how are you?
Okay. Hi.
And Betty?
Hi.
Welcome.
I have the chat now.
Okay.
The feature is here,
Yeah.
just in a different location.
Sure.
Okay.
I think Bill Schweinfurth actually has voice now.
Ah, he does.
Bill?
Hi, Bill. We see you. Can we hear you?
Yes.
Okay. Just so you know, Bill, we've got Reinhardt right above you on the screen. So if you get out of line, I put him directly above you to keep you.
Bill knows I'm pretty harmless, right, Bill?
That's right. I had some difficulty. My PC died on me midstream as I was moving across my Wi-Fi zone, so I just restarted everything.
Okay. All right.
Okay, here's a question from Laura DeConnick, who's on here. She says, as a newbie to hiking, she is wondering what hiking poles she should try first. She's 5'8" feet. Let's see. So Laura, are you still on here?
Wow.
There she is. Okay. Anybody have any suggestions about hiking poles?
Yeah, I have one. I use hiking poles from a company called Paria, P-A-R-I-A. The reason I like them is they fold down 2/3, so they fold down a lot more than normal poles. They're actually not real expensive, but they're good poles, and the company guarantees for life all their products. And I have on several occasions, because I have a habit of breaking hiking poles, broken them, taken pictures, sent it to them, and I already have I've done it several times, and I have a new hiking pole in the mail with some baskets because it broke again on the Washington trip.
Can you spell that for me again?
P-A-R-I-A.
P-A-R-I-A. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I would say that any of the Z poles are a good place to start for their compactness.
Z poles?
They're the types that Luke were describing that fold into threes that form a Z. When as they're closing, they're called Z poles.
Okay, I don't have the kind that fold, but I have the kind that telescope. So they get small, but maybe not as small as the Z poles.
And they tend to be heavier. What we liked about our Z, we just have REI. No, they're not REI. We got them at REI, but I can't tell you the brand. But the weight of them was helpful because we were putting them in suit bags to carry on trips. And
nice.
Okay. I've got the,
Go ahead, Jackson.
Luke, are your poles metallic or carbon
They're
fiber?
carbon, so they're a little bit lighter.
Okay.
Is there a line now? The black diamond, I'd recommend the woman's black diamond poles. They're lightweight, they're ergonomic. They adjust, the adjustment is really easy. While you're walking along, you can change the adjustment for up and down, but they are designed, the women's is designed for women. And I used them after I broke my hip in March. From the wheelchair, I went to, they told me, get a cane or crutches. I said, I've got my hiking poles in the car, I'm gonna use them. And I could go right up the stairs with the hiking poles.
Shay, can you confirm a rumor for me? Bill said that he was the best nurse ever. Is that true?
He was a good nurse. Yes, he was.
All right, I'm just checking.
But I'm a low maintenance nurse. You know, there isn't much you have to do for me.
She's gonna keep me.
Yeah, he is a keeper. He is a keeper. Yeah, he has brought me down from well, it's Grand Teton when I broke a kneecap.
Wow.
I went down in the dark about 4 hours to get help. And actually a Sherpa came up. A Sherpa was there in training, and he came up. I was his first candidate on the gurney, the down mountain gurney.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Boy, that sounds like a Genesene article to me.
Well, Bill would say I probably could do a whole program of injuries on hiking, of rescues.
On that happy note, folks,
yeah,
I'm gonna ask everybody to mute their Zoom meeting if they would, and I'm gonna pass it over to Luke for announcements. And then after that, we'll do a brief introduction of Michael, and we'll move on to the next part of the program.
Just a couple things. So we have a couple positions open that we're looking to fill, some key positions. We're still looking for a trails chair. We have been looking one for a while, but we did have John Rain, who was doing the Sunday hikes. John has requested to basically retire from that position. So we're really looking now for someone that can fill in and do a lot of that trails chair work. Charlie Hellman has resigned the waterways chair position. Charlie's been working with the club for decades, so that's him leaving that position is a big loss. We have several strong leaders in that area, but we need someone to be the chair for that position. Also, the program chair position is open. Jill has agreed to continue to work on that while we find someone. We do have someone who is filling the education chair. Bruce is on the call, but we'd like to find someone who can take over the program chair. So if you or anyone you know has interest in any of those positions, just please contact me, okay? We have Michael Barrett on the call. I just want to talk about, thank you very much, Michael, for joining. I want to just talk about, how this is going to work. So we're going to be turning it over to Michael to talk about the bylaws so he can explain the process that they went through, the study they went through, what the process was, why we feel like the changes are needed. And we're going to turn over the floor to him, and I want to give him as much time as he needs to go through that. If you can leave your questions till after Michael is done, and then afterwards, we will turn it over to you to ask questions to Michael, and we'll have a back and forth. And hopefully it won't go till 3 in the morning, but we should have ample time to go through those things. Okay. Does anyone have any questions beforehand? Okay. So Dave, did you want to introduce Michael, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I'll do it. No, I know everybody knows Michael, but a little background. Almost a year ago, the Adirondack Mountain Club's board of directors unanimously approved Michael as our new executive director. Actually, before Michael was selected, the board had already initiated a strategic planning process to improve ADK. And Michael jumped right on this process quickly when he came. Also because Michael actually visited our chapter 6 months ago, which happened to be our last chapter meeting because of COVID-19. I'm not going to give much more of an introduction. But I do wish to thank him for taking the time from his busy schedule to talk about bylaws proposal and updates on ADK. As Luke mentioned, we'll first let Michael speak, and then we'll open it for questions and answers. So hold your questions till that time. And if I could have you all continue to mute your microphones, it really helps because a little bit of background noise from several microphones pretty much adds up to noise for everybody's eardrums. So thanks if you would mute yourselves now. Michael, welcome. Oh, one other thing. If you want, you can, if you look in the upper right corner, there's this little, put your cursor over there. It says speaker view. And you can, by clicking on that, you can see a larger view of the speaker. Unfortunately, it's me right now, but shortly it'll be Michael. So with no further ado, Michael, welcome.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be with you, albeit virtually. This is my 9th consecutive evening with a Zoom briefing on bylaws. I feel like a rock band playing the same songs, just in a different city. So what I'm happy to do is to go through how we got to where we are, so to speak, and then go through the kind of the highlights. I'm not going to painstakingly take you all through every little change unless that's what you want. I'm guessing it's not going to be. And just discuss the highlights of the bylaws changes. But first I would say that I found it, everyone's going to get to the point where they're, you know, they have their issues, and I will start. It was unwise, I would say. And my background is I've ran a number of large organizations. My last job was a 600-person organization with a $50 million budget. So this is not a heavy lift organizationally, but it was very bizarre that you know, they would not let the new executive director come in, make his or her own observations, draw some conclusions, bring those thoughts to the board, and then contemplate a strategic planning process. It was very bizarre to me that one was kind of in the process as I stepped foot on terra firma here in New York. But be that as it may, the June of 2019 is when the board voted to have a strategic plan. And what was different about this is the decision was to hire a consultant. And that in and of itself is not all that interesting, except preceding it was 3 attempts at a strategic plan to be done internally. So I don't know all the dates. I think it was 2005, maybe 2010, and the last one in 2013, were 3 previous attempts to do a strategic plan internally. And none of those, at least the major substantive findings or recommendations, were adopted. And you know, you don't need a PhD in psychology to understand why that was the case. You know, it's very hard to personalities and group dynamics. It's very easy just to put reports on a shelf. And I think, and I'm speculating here, that perhaps the rationale was, my goodness, we've been 20 plus years without changes. We've been 20 plus years without significant changes to the course of the organization. Our numbers are not good. Perhaps if we paid someone some significant fee, we'll feel compelled to listen to that person. And perhaps that was the wisdom. But the decision was made to engage a consultant, and hats off, they chose absolutely the right consultant. Phenomenal, really impressive individual. Environmental impact at Denver, Colorado, has done more than 700 consultations for nonprofits, government agencies, mostly environmental nonprofits. You know, most of the conclusions that she reached were not, you know, terribly challenging to reach on one's own, except that she had the strength and the fortitude to kind of compel us to work through those issues. And what she did to arrive at those initial findings, which is not all that surprising, is she took all of our documents. She took our bylaws, she took our articles of incorporation, our financials going back 5 to 10 years. She took looked at our programs, our revenue, chapter information. And she also looked at, well, she conducted more than 60, I think it was 65 interviews with the expected stakeholders, the board members, exec committee, senior staff, as well as chapter representatives and donors. And through those through the culling of all that information, she arrived at certain conclusions. And we were presented, the Strategic Planning Committee, which I was on, were presented with those findings in February through a 2-day intensive session. Also on the Strategic Planning Committee were representatives from chapters, board members, officers, and some senior staff members. And I'll just go through the data that we were presented with, which was sobering. You know, we really had to work through. And the first thing was 3 consecutive years of 6-figure deficits. I think over 600,000 totaled over the last 3 years. We have 20 years without a single amendment to the bylaws, and that was despite various changes to New York profit corporation law over the course of that 20 years, to include the conflict of interest provisions brought about by the Enron scandal, I think in '02. In addition, we've seen flat numbers in membership, dwindling in some areas, made up in other areas, but a indicator that was alarming, and that was that 70% of our membership were over the age of 65. So when you have $100,000 plus in deficits each year, a membership that's not growing, that's aging out, and no endowment of any real size on which you can live off the interest, and relevantly as it relates to COVID, the best practice in the nonprofit world was 3 to 6 months in operational expenses for an emergency, and we had none. That, you know, did not make going through COVID all that fun. So this is what we were presented with, and of course, there were suggestions after the 2 days on with respect to changes on the staff side, and we've worked through those changes. And now I don't want to make this all doom and gloom. We've made those changes, and we've got some good things to show for it. And I'll just highlight them here. June saw the highest number of new single memberships in our history. July saw the highest new family memberships in our history, and we are now in the 3rd quarter of the fiscal year, 400,000 plus ahead of budget, compared to 600,000 in deficits over the previous 3 years, and that was it. And that's even when we had 2 months without any revenue coming in. So those are some positive things that came about, I think, through working through some of the challenges that were identified in the strategic planning. The major one on the non-staff side, on the volunteer side, the board side, what have you, is with respect to our governance. Now I know that both culturally and other reasons that we are a little bit of a different organization, but we're still at the end of the day a nonprofit filed in New York's nonprofit corporation law. And so we would be wise to look to best practices as it relates to governing nonprofits. I can tell you as a board member, and I'm sure many of you are on other boards, there are some things that are expected of board members, and it's just kind of general, regardless of what board you're on. And I'd put those, there's 10 of them, but I'll just go through 3 of them. You know, you have this governance, whether it's your own bylaws, following your own bylaws, or complying with the laws of your state and federal government, fundraising, being a contributor yourself, and also helping the organization fundraise, and then also overseeing committees, which is really important. And we did not get wonderfully high grades in these areas, because it should come as no surprise that when you let bylaws go for 20 years, and all the laws that are passed and you don't comply with them, that you know, you find yourself having to make some pretty significant changes as opposed to incremental change that occurred over a period of time. And again, there's a lot of things you'll see in there that are not that sexy, and no one's really going to have a beef with them. But the conflict of interest law was something really significant that a lot of people in the Attorney General's office are paying attention to. I know they just sued the NRA for a lot of these violations. And it just seems like we were asleep at the wheel on this. But it's not just New York law, it's our own bylaws. And again, I'm just going to give examples of one example to be illustrative, not exhaustive. And that is some really low-hanging fruit. We have 5 standing committees in our bylaws. We have more committees, but we have 5 standing committees. And each of those committees have a charter. And if you read the end of the charter says, you know, these charters should be reconstituted every 4 years, and if not, they shall become null and void. Well, these charters haven't been reconstituted in 14 to 16 years. And so there's a real argument to be made about whether any of the decisions that are made on any of these committees are legal. I'm not saying they are, I'm not saying they aren't, I'm just saying it raises a pretty considerable question. And then also with respect to committees, again, I'll give you just one example. In March, when COVID hit, particularly in Asia, we had an adventure travel, which was overseen by a committee. And I started to see emails from participants who wanted their money back and were being told no because they were afraid of going to Asia during COVID. I got involved, and I have no role as a staff person. It's not a staff committee, but they were refusing to cancel trips. Now, keep in mind, ADK would be on the hook if, God forbid, anyone got stuck in Asia and got sick with COVID and couldn't get back. But then I come to find out that not only were they insistent on going, but there was no insurance for foreign travel. None, zero. We were completely naked as to coverage. And so all these things create a scenario, particularly when you go into an emergency like COVID, of, my goodness, how are we going to get through this? And thankfully, we made some smart and timely decisions, and we emerged on the other side of this okay. But it could have went a whole lot worse. And we don't have an endowment, despite our 100 years. We don't have an endowment of, a couple $1 million to live off of. And so it's really concerning that unless we sort of change our ways, these types of hiccups, we may not be so lucky in years to come. And so as we began to work through the 2-day strategic planning session, a number of concerns were raised as we worked through these governance problems. We wanted to make sure that chapters were continued to be represented. And so we called around nationally to a number of other membership organizations to say, how do you do it? And one of the things we saw was a model where you had 2 bodies. One was an advisory body and one was the professional board. And the members would be, or the chapters would be represented on that advisory body. They're called trustees, and they're recognized under not just New York nonprofit corporation law, but also a number of other states as well. So this hybrid that we have in our bylaws of an advisory council, I'm sure many of you have read through it, is not a new animal. It exists in many other different paradigms. But I'm getting to the point now where I'm explaining the big ticket item in our bylaws. We want to make sure going forward that no more are we dropping these balls that could really harm the future of the organization, both fiscally and from a legal standpoint. And so we want to professionalize the board, but at the same time, we want to be able to kind of further some of the goals of the organization and represent some of the main things that we do. So how are we going to do that? So the idea was to come up with a hybrid type of board. But first and foremost, we wanted to shrink the size of the board, which actually was the major recommendation in the 2013 strategic plan, but it was never adopted. And so our board, when you include the executive committee, is 43 people. That is more than 3 times the size of most nonprofit boards, which tend to be, it's actually trending smaller than 15, but I'll say it's around 15. We need to really reduce the size of the board and to meet more frequently. Meeting only quarterly as we do now is not really what we need to respond timely to operational issues that arise. Our current executive committee, which is by contrast, meets monthly, and it's actually really responsive, and they know exactly what's going on in the organization. It's very timely. But the hybrid model would be about 7 or 8 individuals who are recruited among the membership for what skills they bring. Okay, for example, we do logic. Okay, we don't have anyone who's an expert on logic. That would be really nice, particularly during COVID, as hotels are opening and closing in stages using certain protocols. We kind of had to do that from scratch. Also, retail. In fact, our retail numbers are doing quite good online, not so much in the store. So we really could benefit from a lot of those best practices, but we don't have anyone who's expert in those areas. So we would recruit skill sets. In addition to our major committees, and you'll see 2 new ones created in these proposed bylaws, which there are 2 overarching committees. One would bring in our properties, and their chair would have a seat on the board. Also, stewardship would bring in trail work, education, and advocacy. Their chair would have a seat on the board. That currently does not exist. And so our major committees would have seats on the board, as would this advisory council. And so the chapters would also, whatever the chapters wanted or didn't want, what they wanted to see more of, less of, they would have a representative on the board. Now, I've heard one of the major criticisms, or the most frequent criticisms I've seen in emails, is that we're just trying to get rich donors to lead the organization. I wish that was the problem we had. I wish we knew millionaires and billionaires that we were trying to woo to the organization, if only that were so. The issue that we're trying to solve, particularly with respect to 43 board members, is many people don't know this, but one of our major funding streams is grants. We apply for a lot of grants. We're not eligible for a lot of grants unless 100% of our board contributes to the organization. Their rationale is simply this: if your own board doesn't support you financially, why should we? It's a good argument. And so we wanted to require in the bylaws that our board, like all other boards, have a requirement that you contribute in some meaningful way, which is the language that's used. Now, some meaningful way is intentionally ambiguous. Okay, we are not talking about $1, all right, and we're not talking about 10,000 or 15,000. We're talking, something meaningful, $100, $150. So that's really what we're talking about here. It's not defined. We're not trying to get millionaires to run the organization. We are trying to get all people who participate in the board to contribute so that we're eligible for all these grants. So that's the other, the rationale. And, they have to participate in committees. Right now, only I think about 21 to 22% of our board members participate on a committee. So that was some of the other rationale. And how it would come to pass, is, if passed, January 1, the existing board would cease to exist. The executive committee, the current executive committee of 13, 14 individuals, would become the interim or acting board. Part of their responsibilities would be to bring on this new board before, as they roll off their terms. And they would recruit, they would go out and they would find among the memberships, and you can envision receiving correspondence from us as we try to find individuals with those skill sets we're looking for, whether it's a CPA, whether it's a legal, whether it's a web designer. Heaven knows we need a better website, or these other skill sets to bring onto the board. And then the board will have to come up with a process to get, if you look at 3.1, it says the board will develop, or I'm paraphrasing here, develop the process for all elections, and we will attempt to come up with a way to get these names of these recruited individuals back in front of the membership for approval or disapproval, however the case may be, in much the same way that we approve or disapprove of the slate of officers that are put before the membership when voting time comes around. So that's, and how we got here is we had, of course, the strategic planning committee who worked on the strategic planning documents. Those documents were provided to the board. They were briefed by the consultant. And then the president, Tom Andrews, put together a bylaws working group of some chapter members and some members at large. They came up with the bylaws. The bylaws were then proposed to the executive committee. Executive committee passed them unanimously, and then they went to the full board, and which required more 2/3 vote. And we got that vote, and now they are in front of the membership. And so that's how we got to where we are. We've been some of the other criticisms. This is all happening so fast. I would argue that 3 failed efforts at a strategic plan certainly counted to that timeline, and there's a degree of urgency to get something done on it. I mean, the benefit is going forward, the board can make tweaks to the bylaws. We would not need to go back to the full membership, which costs thousands of dollars in ballots, and also 6 to 9 months when you consider factoring printing it in the Adirondack magazine. They can make those tweaks in the first month or 2. So we're able to be more nimble. And also, if you go to the end of the proposed bylaws, there's a provision that requires the president to ensure periodic revisions of the bylaws and other charters, so that we don't let 20 years slip by again without changes. So those are the big ticket items. That's how we got to where we are, both procedurally and substantively. I think the consultant who did a great job on this described us as a patient bleeding out on the table a year ago, and that contributed to a lot of the urgency associated with this. And that's how we got to where we are. So I'll open it up now for questions.
So folks, just keep yourself muted for just a second here. I'd like you to be muted when we're not speaking. With this larger group, we have 28 participants right now. It can get really noisy otherwise. Just one speaker at a time. Let me know in the chat box if you would like to ask a question, and I'll try to roll through those. I will give preference to Genesee Valley chapter members. I think I have an obligation to do that. Also, please be succinct and courteous in your comments and questions so that everybody has an opportunity. With 28 people, over the next half hour or 45 minutes or whatever, you can do the math. It's not a lot of time for each person. So please think about what you want to say and get through it succinctly and courteously. Those of you who may be on a phone, you can send me a text. My number was listed earlier, but it's also, I'll give it to you now, 585-478-5514 if you want to get in the queue. Again, if you're on the phone and don't have video and don't have access to the chat, let me know at 585-478-5514. You don't have a smartphone, try my email. I can only have so many windows open before I go gazillion bunkers, so, but you can try it. That's at dnnichols@gmail.com, dnnichols@gmail.com. Okay, so I know that Bruce Dean has already put in one question. I see Dave Harrison is next, so the queue has started. And I'll let, so Bruce, why don't you unmute first and bring up your question, and then we'll go with Dave Harrison. Are you there, Bruce?
Bruce, you're on mute.
Yeah, he is. Bruce, do you want to give a question? Okay, maybe we'll come back to Bruce in the interest of time. Dave, you want to go next? Dave Harrison.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. In the Adirondack, Michael, we've never met before. I just should mention as way of background, I served as ADK secretary for 4 years during the part of the administration of Jim Byrd as president and part of the administration of John Gilowicz. as president. And in that capacity, I not only took minutes, but I sat in on numerous executive committee meetings and numerous board meetings. And with that background, I'm curious as what is the basis of the statement in Adirondack that the focus of chapter board members, in other words, board members coming from the chapters, has traditionally been to act on behalf of their respective chapter rather than on the larger organization. Now, I never, in the 4 years that I was on the executive committee, did I ever see any chapter member do anything that even implied that he or she was placing their interests, their chapter's interests ahead of the clubs. As a matter of fact, to the contrary, they seem to want to provide input to the board. Maybe I should stop with that one before I get to the second question.
Well, I can only give you, what comes out of their mouth. I did a legal briefing for all the board members 2 weeks before the board vote. And because some of the concerns that I was getting from executive committee members and others, that this was the mindset, that they were chapter representatives. They were certainly selected by the chapter. There's no question there. But the board needs fiduciaries, and they are the fiduciaries of the board. And there was concern. So I gave a briefing where I was unequivocal in what their duties were, the duties of care and confidentiality and loyalty, et cetera. But notwithstanding, and without going into a lot of details here, because there's some confidentiality, people who were actually served from chapters on the strategic planning committee that were in support of it were told by their chapters to vote no, and they said that's why they were voting no. And I have the emails, so I mean, without putting on a case here that this was their mindset, I certainly have sufficient evidence, just because the last couple of Zoom meetings, board meetings were Zoom meetings, and these are all recorded. So they're saying, whether via email or in the board meeting themselves, that that they're representing their chapters. And I kept having to stop the meeting and correct them. And I insisted that the secretary took down my counsel because I wanted to go on record. And so it is a problem. And I'm told that it's been a problem for some time. So I can't speak to your experiences, but these are mine.
Well, rather than reply to that, maybe I could get to my second question. I don't want to take up too much time. And that concerns the issue of financial accountability. The heart of the board meetings as they currently occur is a disclosure of how the club is doing financially. And, comparing it to a corporation for profit, let's say I hypothetically purchase one share of Apple computers, that would at least entitle me as a shareholder to an annual report that has some type of financial statement in it. But I see no financial accountability to the members here, where all the accountability seems to be to a self-perpetuating board. Even the advisory committee, there isn't any accountability to the advisory committee. What is your feeling on that?
Well, I would say, keep in mind my role here is simply I've been a common denominator in all of these meetings. So my role is to simply report out. And so I'm trying to reduce to the extent possible my opinion on all of this. And for instance, regurgitate what the consultant said, what the comments were at meetings, and what reports and findings are, and keep it away from my personal opinion. But I would say that at least for the last 3 years, which is what was talked about, that there was, to your point, there were reports and there was all kinds of financial accountings to the members. But it was, but nothing was done about it. It was year to year to year of deficits and no corrective action. One of the themes that we have seen is taking away the power of the members, whether it's selecting board members or the financial side. But we have not seen any. We've seen a lot of complaining about, the rights that are being taken away, but we're not really talking about the responsibilities that have been ignored for years. And so the question back to you is, with $600,000 in deficits, no endowment, and nothing by way of an operational piggy bank on when COVID hits, is where's the responsibility been? I'm an Army guy, and there's always accountability, and I haven't seen any. So I mean, we can talk about the changes that need to be made, and how that's affecting people. I do not. I talked to a lot of chapter members over the last 9 nights, but during my days, I reached out to just your casual member. When I say your casual member, what I'm talking about is they love the Adirondacks. They enjoyed their time in Heart Lake, and they get a kick out of the magazine. They're happy to give us $50. They have no intention of ever coming to a meeting. They don't do organized hikes, and they're absolutely outraged at. I mean, they assumed that it was being a well-run club, and so they don't really are not all that concerned about their power as a member. They just are kind of frustrated that they've been giving dues, and this is the way it's been run. And so that's their perspective. And I get your perspective because I've heard it for the last 9 nights. I don't see why you're not entitled as a member to the financial documents. You are. I mean, none of that would go away. Those reports can still go out to chapters, to members. In fact, one of the reasons why we are doing these Zoom meetings is to air our dirty laundry, our context for these bylaws in an appropriate way, without having to, by contrast, write them down in the Adirondack and send them out to all the members. I hope we don't have to get there, but that's one of the reasons we're doing these Zoom meetings, is so everyone knows, my goodness, if we don't make some of these corrective actions, where are we going to be? So I would say that you're going to have the same type of financial accountability that you had previously, because you'll be entitled to the same documents to the same level. None of that's going away.
I'm going to move us on. Michael, if you could look in the comments section, Bruce Tian had a question back at 7:57 in the chat room, and I'd like you to address that. Then we'll move on to Jim Bird, Judy Masodi, Jim Townsend, and Peter Collins, who've put in. So I'll let you read that question.
I'm not seeing any timestamps on my end of the chat.
Okay.
So you could just read it.
Sure. So Bruce says, expecting board members to make monetary donations to the club means only wealthy people get to say how the club is run. He has another question for the most part. I'll go on to the next one. Advisory positions have no actual power and no true say in matters, isn't it? Why isn't any of the criticism of the plan publicized in the Adirondack?
Well, it was a timing issue. In fact, we had to move with respect to criticism in the plan. There's really the only editorializing came from those who participated, myself, the president, and I think the bylaws working group had an article, and the timing of it, because we had to get it in the Adirondack rather quick, print ballots, etc., did not permit any of the letters arrived past the date for submission of letters. So it was really a timing issue there.
Okay, thanks. Jim Bird.
Okay, I have a couple that I think you can answer. I would say this with regard to the accountability issue. I noticed that the board votes for the board members and nobody else does. I'm sure you've heard that before. I've been a member of the Sierra Club for a long time, and you may know the history there. They've always had the elections, and they split up about 20 years ago. And it's a good thing that they had the election, because they were able to actually eliminate a slate of directors that weren't doing what the members wanted. The other thing that I noticed is something you mentioned, Michael. The last section talks about updating the bylaws, and it says that that responsibility is exclusively to the board. The question I have is one you mentioned about the Army. Where's the accountability to the board? If the board's doing something that the club doesn't like, we can't even vote on them. Even in corporate boards, the shareholders get to vote, although sometimes meaninglessly, but at least there's a vote. And that leads me to another item that may be a little easier to deal with, and that is the advisory council gets one member on the board. I would argue that there ought to be more than that. And then one thing that I think may be a typo, but I think it's worth your noting, if you look at the rights of the members, it lists that they have a right to be on the board, they have a right to be on committees and things like that. Interestingly, it does not list that they have a right to be officers.
Yeah, so.
And it seems to me that that's kind of where your officers would come from.
So it's funny, and I'll try to take these in reverse order. And thanks for that. I just wrote it down. Officers, you know, in section 2 on member rights, we only added to this provision, so it was actually much shorter. You look at the previous bylaws, member rights was actually much shorter, and we actually went in and added to it. And of course we can add officers, and we'll do that. With respect to your previous comments about the board members not going before the membership, that's a fair point. And what I've been doing is, during these calls that I've been writing down kind of common concerns or criticisms, and all those things are going to the executive committee when we meet, who will become the new board. And one of the virtues of the new bylaws is how easily they can make amendments. I would say that perhaps, I'm speculating, perhaps one of the reasons why we've gone 20 years without a bylaw changes, despite having a bylaws committee with a chair that's been in place for at least the last 13 years, is because of how arduous it is to make changes to the bylaws. To get them in the Adirondack, you have to get ballots out to 27,000 members. So some of these changes, like putting the proposed board members, the recruited board members, in front of the membership, the one you just suggested with adding officers, these are on my list to put in front of the executive committee at our next meeting, which I think is October 23rd, to be considered for when they get to vote on bylaws January 1. And so I don't anticipate, there's no controversy around that provision. In fact, we talked about having it in, and it was actually rated a chuckle, because as it's mirrored right now with how we do our officers. How we do our officers is a slate's put together by the nominating committee, and then it goes in the Adirondack, and then the membership has an opportunity to put together an alternative slate with 100 signatures, no more than 50 from a single chapter. And we've searched high and low our history books, and we can't find a single time that's ever been utilized. And so we were like, it's just for show, and it's never been used. And so we were actually surprised that a number of people were concerned that that's not in there, because it's a right that's never been exercised. And so is there controversy around it? I wouldn't say so. So I'm happily advancing it to the executive committee for consideration as we look to tidy up the bylaws in January.
Okay, and one final item has to do with notification time. You might be interested, maybe you missed it. There are 2 comments in the new bylaws about whenever you make certain changes. One specific is if you change the dues. There's very specific rules about how many days of notice are given and that sort of thing. And it was very interesting to me that this was done much more rapidly than that, and it's far more significant than whether we're going to change the dues. That bothered me, and it's also inconsistent with the philosophy in your new bylaws. I think that there ought, given the geographical spread of our members and what have you, there ought to be about a 60-day notice for significant items. And as the bylaws say, it's in there for dues changes right now. So
yeah, I don't know if it's in there, to your point about bylaw changes, and we have, I think it was just required that it go in the Adirondack, which we did. And if your point is that, it should have, we should have let it simmer for some time, it's a fair point in a vacuum, but I think, Tom Andrews, who has, I think, some well-earned credibility in this organization, if he was here, I gave him the night off because he's done a lot of these with me. He'd tell you that, and I know his lines by now, we've been a little bit of an Abbott and Costello routine for the last couple of weeks, that he's been a member since 1973 and has served in almost every meaningful role there is in the organization. And his frustration lies in our ADK mantra of identifying a problem, talking about it, forming a committee, talking about it more, coming up with some written solutions, and then putting those solutions on the shelf and then kicking the can down the road. That's his frustration. And when he was talked into this presidency, he certainly wasn't advancing his own name. He said, well, at least I'm going to make the most out of it. We're going to get some things done. So I think if we didn't have the history of 3 failed attempts at strategic plans, 20 years of neglect on the bylaws, I would say, yeah, let's do some due diligence here and let it fester, put it out there for 6 months. But I think we've created our own scenario where time is of the essence, so I think that's the counterpoint.
Okay, folks, we're going to move on to the next group of people. So then, if you've just joined us, feel free to put your name in the Zoom group chat so that we can know that you want to bring up a question, and I'll get you as we go through that in order. Also, please make sure as you come in that you mute your microphone so we don't end up with a lot of background noise. I appreciate that quite a bit. Okay, so next up, I have Judy Amasote, Jim Townsend, then Peter Collins. So Judy, you're up next.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Michael. It's nice to meet you, and I appreciate the job that you're doing and the task you're undertaking. Everybody's asking very complicated and complex questions, but my question is, what do we do if this doesn't pass? What happens then?
Well, I go to the liquor store.
Yeah, okay. That's it's probably not a bad idea. No, I mean, has that been discussed? Has there been any, indication as to how things will be handled? Because these changes need to be made. They've been going on far too long. I served also on the board, also on the executive committee, and I know how long these things take. And people take it very personally. But some changes need to be made. They've needed to be made for a long time. So how do we go about dealing with it if this doesn't pass?
I don't know. I think I got to be honest with you. I think my diplomatic answer is one way, and my honest to God answer I'd give you on a bar stool is a different answer entirely. I can tell you this. The staff, and I know that not a lot of, when I was on the board of the Ronald McDonald House, I have to tell you, we did our work on governance, but every time we made a change, we said, where's staff on this? What does staff think? What does staff think? I don't think I've ever heard that. And there's, when I asked Virginia and others, I said, is that ever talked about? They no. And so it seems like, staff's given kind of a short shrift, and I don't know why, because they're really quite good. And not only are they staff members, but they're also members of the organization, and this is their career, and this is what puts bread on their table. And I know it's a club to a lot of other people, but to them it's a pretty really significant. And so they're kind of fed up. If they were employees of Ford Motor Company and the board was dropping the ball year after year on budgets and bylaws and all the other stuff, there'd be pickets. And so they're really fed up. So I'm, you know, I know that they're fit to be tied, to use a Midwestern term. And then they're certainly grumbling as to what their options are, because they're taking the position that they've been silent for far too long. And so I'm doing my best to get this across the finish line, clearing up misconceptions, what have you. I know that Tom Andrews who's retired, who's still putting in 20, 25 hours a week. He had to send a letter this past week to chapters because votes were being taken to oppose it, and sending out emails, mass emails to membership. And it's a real head scratcher for me, because I got to tell you, I mean, there is no you. There is no you. There is only us. You're not a separate, chapters are not a separate legal corporation. The governing body of this organization has spoken to take a separate position and to run a counter campaign on this. I mean, vote your conscience by all means, but to run counter campaigns for the last couple of weeks is really disheartening and probably illegal. But I don't know what we'll do. I mean, and what our options are. My concern is what my obligations are as an officer of the corporation, because when you are in non-compliance with things, you have two options as an officer of the corporation, of which I am one: to do your level best to bring it into compliance, or two, and if that doesn't work, to report it. Those are the options. And so to get to the brass tacks of your question, those are the options. I really don't hope we don't get there. I don't think we will. I really think I don't think this is going to be a problem. I think it's going to pass. But I still think these Zoom meetings are important, because the folks need to know the context of why we're doing what we're doing, that we're not just asleep at the wheel or being reckless, that this is absolutely needed to move the organization forward and to make it last another generation or two. So I'm optimistic that it'll pass. I will, in good faith, bring up the issues that I'm hearing from night to night, so that we can make the changes to the bylaws going forward. But at the end of the day, to answer your question, those are the two legal options that we have.
Okay.
Well, I think we can all agree that the general doesn't understand the issues behind the club. You know, they see the hiking and the education and the conservation, but they don't understand what's actually behind it. And that's where the importance of communication is, so that they are clear on what those things mean. And I'm voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Townsend, you're up next. Jim? Okay, well, he left a chat. I will try to read it for him. He says, I don't need to speak directly, but would like Michael to address how changing the bylaws ensures changes in board governance problems. Seems that the board should have training, whatever the form of election or the size of the board. I may just have to step away and would let you ask him. Okay.
Okay, I really, what I took away from that, Dave, and maybe you can correct me, is just the need, regardless of what direction we take, is the need for training at the board level. I don't know what's going on in the past. I've heard that there's been training. I don't know what it's looked like. We put on a brief one a few weeks ago, but absolutely. I think what happens is this. Look, not my first time around the, my first rodeo is, here's what happens. And it's innocent enough. Chapters chapters have a hard enough time. And yours is probably, I got to say, probably one of the most robust active chapters we have, unquestionably. But a lot of chapters are struggling. They have a hard time finding people to serve in local capacities and chairs, and it's hard. And so when it comes time to have a board representative, it becomes pleading and begging. So it's like, oh, would you be our board member? Would you be our board member? And of course, it's like, well, what does that entail? You know, you go to Albany, you go to Lake George 4 times a year. And that's really the conversation that happens by and large. And then they get here and they realize that there's all these other requirements, you know, these legal, and it, you know, becomes overwhelming. That's not the right time to get them. When you identify the individual, you sit with them then, and then, you know, you sit down and you explain to them what the responsibilities are. And so they understand it, and they get sort of a mini training before they come in, before they accept the position. And so that's really important. But then, of course, when someone becomes a board member and the membership approves, then there's onboarding that must take place. And onboarding should come with a history of the organization, what the issues are, and then the legal requirements to include the fiduciary obligations. That should absolutely take place. And to Jim's point, I think is his point, regardless of whether it passes or doesn't pass, this is absolutely essential for success going forward.
Thanks.
I think it's
Peter?
I think it gives the impression of leaders.
Yes. Again, Michael, thanks for joining us tonight. I have been a board member of several not-for-profits, and I absolutely agree with about 90% of the proposed bylaws changes, and they need to happen. But I have a real problem with the other 10%, and they're really the same issues that Jim Bird raised earlier. And interestingly, because we've, in Adirondack and on a previous Zoom call, we hear that the Appalachian Mountain Club was our model. And these three things are all places that we did not follow the Appalachian Mountain Club. It's directors electing the next set of directors without going to the membership. It's changing the bylaws without going to the membership. And it's only having one representative for the chapters on the board. None of those are true in the Appalachian Mountain Club. And so, so that they have regional directors, several of them that represent different regions of chapters. So I'm having a hard time understanding why those decisions were made. And so maybe you can address that. My personal hope, if this vote doesn't go positive, that you resubmit exactly the same bylaws and change those three things, and I think it would get much.
Yeah, so I'm happy to address it. First, I'll take the reference to the Appalachian Mountain Club, and perhaps we should have clarified on our end when we sent around that article. It wasn't meant to say that this is what the model that we are attempting to mirror. The point was, and again, we own this because we didn't explain it very well, is that we wanted to make the point that we recognize that change is hard, and a group that is a predecessor to us in many ways suffered through many of the same pangs and toils that we are going through now in the late 80s and the early 90s. A lot of there was a push to more professionalize the organization. They were dealing with really significant deficits, and changes needed to be made. And there was a cultural kind of war in the organization, a lot of infighting. And I thought it was at least provided kind of a ray of hope that we're not the first ones to be there, that they managed to get through this and they emerged on the other side. Some people liked the changes that were made, some people didn't, but certainly they're doing a lot better as an organization in terms of their governance, in terms of their profitability. And so that's what it was offered for. So, but going back to your point, and I thought I addressed this, my apologies, when Mr. Bird brought him up, is that we didn't remove the accountability by the membership because we didn't want it. We removed it because it's existed, throughout our history, and it's never been used. And we thought it would just be time wasted by letting it fester in the Adirondack for a couple months, waiting for the membership to have its opportunity to say something, and it never does. And so we removed it for that reason. By the same token, is it controversial? What's the resistance in putting it back in? I don't think there is any. I don't think there is any. I've certainly already talked to the executive committee. I know Jean-Claude, who was the chair of the strategic plan for the Mid-Hudson chapter, he has been on the first couple of Zoom calls we had when this came up. He was as surprised as I was, and he said, let's put it on the executive committee agenda. So now the question is what's the quickest way to get that done? Is it to pull the bylaws and have a new draft go before the executive committee and then the board and then back in the Adirondack, or is it to allow the bylaws to pass and have the executive committee just make the change, which would require exactly one meeting? That's certainly the easier way to get it done. But I hear you. You and Mr. Bird are not the first person that's mentioned it. I can say that there has been no resistance on staff or executive committee or the board to that suggestion, and I really don't see it being an issue being incorporated in the months to come.
Just ask one quick technical question that I think you'll be able to answer, I hope. You said that on January 1st, if this passes, the current executive committee essentially becomes the interim board, and then we go from there. What I read in Article 15, it says all officers, directors, and executive committee members shall remain in office as of the effective date until expiration of their current terms. So it sounds to me like the current directors stay directors.
Yeah, so that is not the, I've heard different viewpoints on that, and the idea is I think the language that we've been relying on is a reference, I think it occurs once, if not two times, that when the board is not properly constituted, the executive committee, and I can't reference the provision off the top of my head, but when the board is not properly constituted, which would be January 1, then the executive committee will become the interim board and will serve out their term. So that's the idea. So whether we were artful in how we put that in there or not is, I guess there's some fair criticism there, but that was the intent.
Next, Bill Lindenfelser has a question.
Thanks, Dave. Hi, Michael. It's only been a few hours since we had an extensive phone conversation, and again, let me thank you for giving me your time to hear me out. I don't have a lot to add at this point, but except emphasis, and that is, and this is not going to be a surprise to you, Michael, but it is to reinforce what both Jim Bird and Peter Collins have said about putting in an explicit language in the bylaws for accountability, particularly in the two areas that they've highlighted, the election of board members and changes in the bylaws. And I've heard your concern about the time that it would take to do this, perhaps another significant expenditure in order to be able to send out more ballots, et cetera. You're the lawyer, I'm not, but I would think that at the very least, a statement from you and perhaps from Tom to the effect that the board will, in fact, put items like these at the top of their agenda for consideration for inclusion in the bylaws, and then sending such a note out to the membership would go a long ways towards giving us a good feeling that this is really going to happen. Understanding, again, that it's not legally binding, but we all do belong to the same organization right here. And I trust you when you say you're going to bring this up and presumably advocate for it also. So let me make that as a suggestion, that as a mechanism by which we can put this together. Thank you.
I was on mute. So our next executive committee meeting is September 23rd. It's a Wednesday night. And I drafted the agenda today and I put it on the agenda, and I actually put in the notes, the bottom, usually you just put the agenda item like revisions to bylaws, but I actually put at the bottom of the agenda and an asterisk what the specific suggestions were. So it's already an ADK record that this is before the executive committee. So I'm already walking down that path. And again, to the extent that there's some anxiety associated with this, I can't stress enough that there's no controversial thing here. In fact, it's kind of ironic that, my beef has been, there's been no damn accountability in the organization. Budgets are, it's like people are drunk at the wheel. Budgets out the table, no membership, budgets, financials, all this stuff. And there's, I'm furious that there's no accountability. And I had to go into COVID with no money to rely on and get this club through it. And I'm kind of furious. And here we are talking about accountability. It's kind of ironic. But yeah, I don't care. I will tell Tom tomorrow morning that the suggestion to kind of get this out to the membership in some way. But I just have to point that out, that a bit of irony. But it's not a controversial provision. And it's already in my proposed agenda to Tom. How it works is staff puts together a proposed agenda based on what the issues are in the organization. Tom makes amendments as president to the agenda, and then it goes out to the members of the executive committee. So I don't see him saying it can't be in there. So it's already on the proposed agenda, and I will make the recommendation to him. I'm a staff person. That would come from him. And he's, although he's the president, he's one person. He cannot promise that it'll happen because there's other voting members of the executive committee. But knowing those individuals and knowing what their interests have been and how they've participated in the process thus far, I would be really surprised if any of those individuals would have a problem with the provision as well.
I just want to add something to Bill's suggestion, because timing is extremely important here, and I want to make sure everybody knows the vote was moved out to October 2nd. So there's more time than maybe some people realize. And since the issues that people seem to have a problem with, and to Bill's point and Peter's point and Jim's point, most people are probably fine with most of it. It's a couple of these little points. So a message from Central ADK that you recognize this and that this is on the agenda and you're going to be talking about this may make a very big difference to a lot of voting members who will have time in between your board meeting, a little bit of time, and when the vote is due. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm happy to share that with Tom. I'll say this, and nobody wants me to editorialize anymore, but I think this is important. When you make small incremental changes to things like bylaws from years to year, people hardly even notice the change, right? It's just one small thing. Everyone can hone in on the change. There's some, wordsmanship, but very little. We essentially did almost a major rewrite because nothing was done in 20 years. And when you do a major rewrite, having written legislation for years and legal documents, you never get it right the first draft. You never get it right. And so the virtue of this is how easily it'll be to amend it. We won't get past January, we can make changes to it. So that's the positive side. So that's why there, maybe some balls were dropped in writing. It was because it was such a major rewrite. It's 20 years of no changes, and then boom, you have this major rewrite. And so it doesn't come as a surprise to me, some of the outrage in the email that I get every waking hour of the day about, how we don't know what we're doing. You just don't write a document like this without, overseeing something. And so I would say that this is one of those things that we didn't intentionally exclude. And so I really don't see the opposite politics on fighting to keep it out. In fact, they'd be delighted to know that this was what the dissension was and happily probably included. But I don't want to put words in Tom's mouth. But you have my word that I will share this with him, and I doubt Tom would oppose making some sort of statement to the chapters, and probably only the chapters, because I think that's where the issue lies.
Thanks, Michael. Jim Bird has another question, so I'll let him speak.
This is a little bit different. There was a strategic plan that was done. Normally, at least the gist of that is shared with the membership. when might we be seeing that? When I was reviewing these bylaws, I got the impression that, well, we need to change the bylaws in order to help implement the strategic plan, but I couldn't see the strategic plan. So how do I really know?
All right, I think I got the gist of that. As you got, Jim, as you got closer to the mic, you were phasing in and out, but I think what you were saying is something about strategic plan documents.
Can you hear me better from here?
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you give that another shot?
Okay, just, I was asking, when might we see something about the strategic plan?
A little more detail.
So when
it was referenced
I'm trying to
as the
think
basis
what went
for all
out, there was
this.
something went out to chapter chairs. Yeah, so there was a document that went out, I think a week or so ago, to chapter chairs, and there were 3 documents in it. One was a strategic plan document, one was the Harvard Business Journal, and the other was bylaws. And so that went out to chapter chairs not too long ago. You know, and so what was presented to the board was 2 things as it relates to the strategic plan. One was a PowerPoint presentation, and we have that. And in addition, there was another strategic plan document which was shared with the chapter chairs in addition to being shared with the board. And so I would just ask your chapter chair for that document, and if not, I can just email it to you.
Jim, if I have it, I'll send it out. There was some things sent out, some things that were not sent out. But if we got it, we'll send it out. Some of the documents that were mentioned were not sent to the chapter chairs, but I was able to get through somebody from either another chapter or a member. But if I don't have it, I could probably, Mike, I could always contact Virginia also, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
We'll get it.
and Luke, we could put it up on our Google Drive and send an email blast out with a link to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I have one from outside the chapter that one question that I'll bring up. Why has only one bylaw change being given to the membership for a vote? There hasn't been any debate for the membership to make an informed decision.
Can you maybe restate the first part of that? I don't think I understood it.
Because, well, I'm just reading it as it was sent in to me by email. Why is only one bylaw change being given to the membership for vote? I'm assuming they would have liked to have seen, I don't know, different versions. I don't know, different options. I'm really not sure.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only conclusion to take from that, that perhaps this person that would have preferred kind of like, you know, door number 1, door number 2, door number 3, different versions of the bylaws. I don't think that was ever contemplated. I think there was a lot of negotiation among board members, members of the executive committee, the bylaws working group on what the bylaws should look like. And those were presented to the board. And those are the ones that are board approved are the ones that go before the voters, the members, not options, because what you have to put in front of the members is what the board approves. That's kind of the process. So, you know, it seems like they wanted options. I'm sorry we didn't do that.
And one other question from outside also was, it appears that Main Club is pushing this change to get better guidance in how to govern the club. Why not just hire competent staff instead? I think there's a confusion between staff and governance there. But,
yeah, I think so too.
so I'll leave it at that. Any other questions people want to bring in at this point? Oh, Dave Harrison.
Yes, I have one question, Michael, on we have an executive committee under this structure, and we have a board of directors. The board of directors you've described as a professional group. How does their role differ from the executive committee? I mean, I saw a lot of professionals on that executive committee, is it just a matter of the executive committee proposing policies and then just presenting them to the board, or is the board as active as the executive committee?
So I want to understand, are you talking about under the new arrangement or the
The
present
new
day?
arrangement.
Okay.
The new arrangement.
So I think the difference, and if I'm going off base, just interject. I think, as I understand your question, is that one of the things when you go out and you form a board, as I was recruited to serve on the Ronald McDonald House board, you know, we had a few financial people, we had a few legal people, we had a few people that were connected in the community to be kind of, you know, to help with the fundraising. For us, I would say that one of perhaps the common theme for most nonprofits in America doesn't apply to us. And it's one of our challenges as well as it's one of our strengths. Most nonprofits do one thing and they do it really well. Boys and Girls Club, you know, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Red Cross, all that stuff. We put on a magazine, which is no easy lift. We run lodging, right? That's a whole profession in and of itself, include the campgrounds, what have you. We do educational staff. We have educational staff, educational training. You know, we do membership, we do fundraising. So we do a lot of different things, and we could really benefit from professional guidance in certain key areas that we currently don't have. For instance, our website is atrocious. It's terrible. It weighs us down. There's no virtue associated with our website. So and it's a $40,000 animal, and we need a new one. I don't have any website experience, and nobody on staff really does in terms of how to develop one. And so we found this wonderful volunteer that does this for a living. Because of all the problems we have on our website, it'd be great to have that skill set on the board. And that's what we kind of want. We don't need to load the board, all 15 people with skill sets, but at the very least, we need a representative body that has expertise in the things that we do. I think that's absolutely essential. And so whether that is different from it's a little bit different from our current executive committee. And so I would just offer that up as the rationale.
Thank you.
What's the term of the board?
Jackson?
Good, I forget.
Jackson, I think you have your hand up. You're on mute.
Michael, after considerable time and resources were spent last year to redevelop the main club's website, why do you feel that it is completely poor in design and service?
Well, nothing's working on it, to say the least. All the, what's challenging about our website is all these different plugins, whether it's for, our reservation system, our management system, all the interfaces between the software that we use for membership, et cetera. My understanding is it was not programmed correctly, and it needs to be constantly updated. For instance, the latest problem was we had a new book that we were putting out and we couldn't upload it onto the website. We needed to pay our web designer to fix it. And recently as January, we got sued because it wasn't ADA, our website wasn't ADA compliant. And we had to settle a lawsuit. And so you'd be hard pressed to find a staff person, and I'm not sophisticated in these issues, but you'd be hard pressed to find a staff person who has anything nice to say about our website. And it's constantly wonky. It was not developed to do the things that we needed to do. If some other people like Ben Brasso were here, they'd be able to give you the technical side of it. But we are spending good money to chase bad money on all the fixes that we have to make on a monthly basis to keep our website up and running. To give you one of the analytics, that we have enormous traffic to our website, enormous traffic. But our analytics show that someone stays on our website only on the homepage for 6 seconds and then leaves. So it's the equivalent of they're interested in the storefront, but nothing is intriguing, sufficiently intriguing to make them go inside. And so that's a real problem in the world of websites. I'm told that those analytics are really basement poor.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know the analytics had developed that type of expertise so that we could analyze that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's getting kind of late, folks. I know we could probably go on forever with some of these questions, but I think it's also fair to thank Michael for his time. I know he's been on a lot of these. I was on several of myself, and when he mentions things like other chapters trying to sabotage votes for the membership and also contacting people like me and trying to sway you, it's real. And so I appreciate him coming on. I thought it was very important to give him a voice, and I wanted you to hear that voice and not hear naysayers from other chapters, because if you haven't heard from them, you may in the future. So Michael, I wanted to really thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And just a little personal experience in my time as chapter chair. This is my 2nd year. I never met Neil. My time on the board. I talked to Michael several times during COVID. He always told me, just call me. And I always reached him, or he called me back right away. And if I didn't hear him then in the summer, I'd see him on a trail in the Adirondacks. So he's very, very accessible to people that are on the chapter boards. And anytime I call him, we have a discussion, we talk it through. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So thanks again, Michael. Hopefully you're going to get a night off soon, and we'll look forward.
My wife tells me if I don't, then she's going to hear from her representatives.
Okay.
So I hear from representatives. So let's hope so.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you very much, and thanks everyone for joining the call and all the excellent questions. We really appreciate it.
I meant what I said earlier. I came out to your chapter and I was very impressed. I think we'd be a lot better club if more chapters looked like yours. Certainly, one of the mantras from the strategic planning is 180K, and we're already talking at headquarters, so to speak, at ways that we can help you be more successful, not just with membership, but also with, the activities that you want to put on. And we're looking to find ways to do that. So hopefully when we have this bylaw stuff behind us, when COVID is behind us, we can begin to start having those conversations.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Good
Night,
night.
everybody.
Good night.